My name is Michael Groce. I'm a writer and a performance poet. Mainly played football because I love football. I've been playing that since I was a little boy. So I did a lot of football, a lot of sports, did a lot of raving with my sisters, and my family was really into music, and they used to follow a little sound called Soloid. So I should do a lot of that. They're a girlish sound, not the ragamuffin sound. So if you want to go out and have a nice time, you went Soloid, where all the girls was. And if you wanted to have a roughneck time, you'd go to something like Nasty Rockers, all them other sounds, and it would be a different vibe. So I was with 5 sisters, you know I'm with the girls, right? If I go back in time, I was really influenced by what my mum listened to at first, which was old-time ska and soul music, right? Reggae music, old-time soul, like Solomon Burke, Al Green. And then I got into soul. Everybody else was into reggae music, and in days we had a thing called Lovers Rock, but I was more into soul. So I used to like GQ Band, Luther Vandross, Change, all sounds like that. So I used to listen to a lot of soul music, and wear my little earring, you know, and everyone used to call me names and everything like that, but it was original soul man. So yeah, that's what I used to do, a lot of that, a lot of street dancing as well, so that was really pretty good. My mum said I'd get up early in the morning and you'd be hearing everybody else would be called, Michael and Paul, get inside now. But my mum was one of them ones who just let me do what I wanted to do anyway, and so I was always out till late. So I'd be playing football late at night. We'll go in West End sometimes and go and see what's happening at the West End. Used to walk to the West End during the middle of the night, go to the arcade machine, play pinball machine. Asked to play for my local football team called Heathfield. And the guy I got in the change room, it's only the same guy again. So I'm like, flip, what am I going to do? So I've gone in the changing room, I'm going to do his voice, and he went, yeah, you're right. And he's the same age as me, you know? I go, see, I'm right, man, not too bad. Cool. We played a game of football, and at half time, my manager said we all need a bit more training. And he goes, Michael, I'd like you to take some extra training, so we're going to ask Frank to train you. And it was Frank Bruno. But he was super fit, so, you know, training with him, it gave me and he played cricket, he did boxing, he played football, so we was, you know, all part of that thing with him. Yeah, so he trained me for that, yeah. I like Frank, he's good. What happened was I was living in Brixton, I was a little boy getting in trouble, so they said they called me unruly. So I didn't know what that meant. I'd be like, yeah, I am unruly, so what? But they came and got me one day. My social worker said, she should come and visit me. What she should do, she'd come and visit me, and they'll take me to somewhere like some park or West End, and I should buy a little toy. I remember the first time she took me, I had a little bus. The next time I got a little soldier. So I thought she was going to take me somewhere. Took me on this long drive, and she took me to a place called Heathfield in Sussex. And when I got there, I saw about 6 kids playing. So I thought, wow, this guy's like a black man. He's got kids everywhere, and I'm really going to play with the kids. So when it started playing for the kids, she drove away, and left me there. And she dumped me in the children's home, and I'll never forget that moment. The first word I learnt was London, and I remembered finding out where the first sign was for London, saw it, kept on trying to run away, didn't work. So I ended up staying in Beechwood House for 7 years. And that's when my football for love football really did kick off, because being in the countryside like I was, it gave me an opportunity to play all the sports, rugby, football, cross country, running. I did archery, shooting, with greyhound running, I did everything, bobsleighing on the countryside, so I really had an active taste for activity. And so when I came back to London, it was almost like there was nothing to do apart from go to the little youth club, and they were just playing table tennis, and it was concrete grass, concrete, and everything like that. And the facilities was as good, and the games was a lot rougher, and the youths then was much tougher to play against. Yeah, and then I left that children's home, and I survived. No, I didn't survive. 6 months. I came back to London and then got in trouble, and they banned me from London. Sent me to a place in Reading to live. And again, I picked up my football again, ended up playing for Reading Town. No, Wokingham first. But I went away got arrested, put in a place called Portland. So I played football in Portland, Borstal. And when I wasn't playing football for Portland, Borstal, they actually asked me to play football for the local team. So they got me out my cell and started playing for a little town called Weymouth. So every Saturday I used to go to the local town and play football. There was still a lot of racism going on. So it wasn't quite, if you didn't fit a certain mould, I believe, when you went for a job on a building site, you weren't really going to get that job. So there were certain attitudes that was going. So unless you spoke a certain language, so if you can go on a building site, for example, and say to the foreman, I'm looking work, and you speak to them in a particular language, you can get the job. But I remember telling someone that you can go to a local job centre and all the jobs be on the board, and what you do, you just pick it off, you write a number on it, and you give it to the advisor, and the advisor would then make the phone call, and you'd be interviewed that day. You'd probably start that afternoon, right? And then if you didn't like it, you can give up that job. So there was work, but whether we was grabbing it was another thing. But at the same time, you had things like the miners' strike was going on. You had other strikes up and down the country that was going on. There was a lot of political turmoil. So what I mean to say, the poverty was, there was a lot more other people outside of my culture that was unemployed. So you was in competition to get that job. But my auntie, we used to write together. And one night, she watched news at 10. She was going to a dance and she was watching news at 10. And on the news at 10, there was a robbery called this £7 million went. So she wrote a lyrics called "A robbery, a robbery, a robbery, a robbery." And when she did that, she took it to the dance. She took it to the dance and released that song that night. And the place went mad. So she got a record deal, Lorna, with Mad Professor. So we was walking through Brixton one day to sign on. Yeah. All right, and go to the job centre, and she saw Linton Kwesi Johnson. She said, "Linton, come here, I need to talk to you, man. I need to talk to you, man." He goes, "Well, go on, Lana G." She goes, "I've just got a contract, man, with Mad Professor, but I feel like my depth, man. I don't know what to write." So he's going, "What do you mean you don't know what to write? Just write about your life, man." She goes, "What do you mean write about my life? I can't write about my life. I ain't got nothing to write about." So he said to her, "Where are you going now, Lorna?" And she said, "I'm going to signing on place." Yeah. He was like, "Signing on? What do you mean? What's happening?" She goes, "Tree with the gun and Majara don't come." She wrote the song, man, took it to the sound system. I love this tune. Brilliant. And that is what you call social commentary. Unless you got into those jobs like the nursing, maybe the bus driver is one of them that you could look at it as a long-term thing, because anything with a uniform is long-term in my community, you know? You see a man with a uniform, he look at you like you're dirt. He'll be like, "I've got a job with the underground." So, you know, that was one of the top big jobs in my community. Nurse, underground, I would say, buses, overground. You really didn't see police. No one wore police uniform in my community. So I think that was that group. And then you had the other side would be the labouring, painting and decorating, window, bricklayer and all them things. They're quite skilled jobs anyway. Then you got the non-skilled. Okay, so in 81, I knew Biscuit very well. So once we heard what he was happening to him, everybody ran down to the line.
And what was happening to him?
He got into a fight, and the police, while we was waiting to get him to hospital, the police came and tried to arrest him. So we weren't giving him, because in them days, we had to move in pairs. If I'm in the line tonight, right, and I want to go home, back home to Normally Road where I lived, 5 men have to follow me to the end of the road to make sure I can get to my destination. It's like Wizard of Oz. And then he'll follow you to your door. Then the 5 men will walk back to the venue and finish off what they're doing. Then the next man said, boy, I'm ready to go home, you know. So next thing, 6 of us have to go with him and walk him to where he needs to get to, because you'd walk around the van. I called it the occupation. So the policeman's occupation was to occupy my space in Brixton. So you would walk him down the road, you bust a corner, and there'd be a van, SPG, full up with police. They'll just drag you in, cuff you, hit you on the head, all sorts of things. So you have to be very careful. It was much harder to touch you if there was in a group of you, because we'd be willing to fight, than if you was on your Jack Jones, to fight them on your own. So, move fast forward. I get released from jail. End up moving to a place in Waterloo with my partner at the time. Me showing off, doing what I'm doing, catch up and argue with my girl, and I took out my gun and I fired it into a wardrobe. As I fired it into a wardrobe, there was a knock at my door, which I thought was the neighbour, because I lived in one of them houses where it's 3 stories, and there was an intercom. I was very posh as well. Intercom. And it was the intercom was there. I lived in Waterloo opposite ITV. So I was like, this must be my neighbour, because if it was anybody else, I would have had the buzzer ringing, right? So I opened the door, and I realised the man said to me, "Are you Michael Groce?" So I just knew automatically it was police. So I then went to close the door, and then he pushed himself forward. And as he pushed himself forward, I grabbed him, put the gun in his mouth, put him on the floor, took him off. He run. Then I went back in the house, cleaned my gun, dived out the window, and went on the run for about 3 days. Now, if there was a message to tell me that they don't want me no more, but I hand myself in. So I thought, what I'd do is, I'll take one more night out, because I expected to go away a long time. One more night out, see my girl for the last time, say goodbye to everybody, then hand myself in. But during the night, the police went to my mum's house, even though they said they'd stood down, and shot her. And the body went in, went down her body, because they rubbed it down, they called it a dum-dum bullet. They had a warrant to shoot to kill. So, you know, it was curtains. They even sent me messages telling him he's dead. And I was like, I don't know what's going on. I left the gun behind. I thought they wasn't going to shoot, but the gun got hidden. So the police couldn't find the gun. So they Thatcher signed the warrant, and then Douglas Hurd signed it as well. You need 2 signatures for that warrant. So she done it, then Hurd done it, and then they came after me. But in their hunt, they shot my mum. Now, at that kind of night, people gathered at my mum's house, and the press was there, and all sorts of things. And then there's a message that said my mum had died. So everybody marched down to the Brixton police station. And when they got to the Brixton police station, they're like all gathered outside it, and they was like, oh yeah, and there's all these making noise. And then one girl, I'm not even going to tell you because I know it is, she picked up a petrol bomb and she just threw it at the police station, and that kicked it off. So the riots, I think, went off about 4 days. There was murders, 2 people got killed, the whole of Brixton got burnt down. I've always told people, for me, I think that riot was different than all the other riots. Because it wasn't just her. You had 3 of them that happened that year. You had Cynthia Jarrett, and you had Joe Gardner. Then you had my mum, 3 mums. And you know what their sons were called? Michael.
Wow.
Can you believe it?
Wow.
And the police officers had a name, had lock in it. Love lock, Blake lock, thingy lock. So it's crazy, you know? It was like, what is going on? But why we said it was different, I think if I got shot, I don't think it would have rioted. That gave a different feel to the atmosphere, because that's mum. She was pretty sick, but she still brought up her 7 children, still cooked food, still moaned at us, still went the same, dealt with us in the same ferocity that she would deal with us when we was younger. But what I found from her was, and I think that's what helped me get through the rest of the 80s, because it was still a negative period for me, was that I witnessed someone from the wheelchair become tall. It's like she's sitting there, but she's travelled further than me and her paralysed foot than people who have got normal feet can travel. Her spirit was, fantastic. And I saw her on a Monday, all these tubes hanging out of her, everything was there. And I remember walking up to her, I was on the back, and all the other body was around her, and I was kind of feeling embarrassed. I felt ashamed of myself that my mother's been injured because of me. And I couldn't even look. Even though I was not totally in the wrong, I still did what I did. I just thought, all right. So she goes, Mike, come here. So I walked over to her, still got my head down like that. She goes, you all right? I said, yeah, I'm fine. She goes, did you do it? I said, no, I never done it. And she goes, all right. And I just stepped back a bit. My grandmother came forward. She goes, you must have done something wrong. You must have done something wrong. Them police would never do it. I said, Ma, I never done nothing. My mum went, you never did it.